This is The Extra Point, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast, sponsored by your Phoenix Suns.
Well, surprise today as we get set for the Big 12 men's basketball tournament start in Kansas City. We had thought Bobby Hurley might be coaching his last game. It certainly hasn't been a year anybody wanted at Arizona State, but a report today that Hurley will stick around, and the plan for next year is to keep him around. So let's talk to the man who's always around the Sun Devil program from Sundevilsource, the one, the only Chris Karpman, the hardest working man in show business in Tempe, and I guess, you know, things are, you're not in Kansas City today because there's always something happening there on campus, but what can you tell us about how this news is being received in Sun Devil circles?
Well, there's been a lot of sentiment against Bobby Hurley that's come out in recent weeks. This is an ASU team that's lost 9 straight home games to end the regular season in the 10th year of a coach. That's never conducive to success in the fan base, Mark. Now, they've had a lot of challenges, injuries to some of their top players, disciplinary issues that have contributed to other guys not being out there, including their leading scorer, BJ Freeman, conduct detrimental to the team. But the reality is that the economic circumstances at ASU led to a decision to not fire Bobby Hurley. And so he has the option of being able to continue in what would be his last season of his contract next year. If he wants to pursue that, he, of course, would like to get a contract extension. I think that no determination has been made on that. And so it appears likely that he will return to ASU for that final year, but he also could explore other options, jobs that may be available, et cetera.
Yeah, it's tough for the coach to recruit when you only have 1 year left on your contract. It's used against you in the recruiting world. How can you give us a sense of how big of a deal that would be to not have a contract extension?
Historically, it's a job killer for a coach to be in that situation. I think it matters a lot less now than it did just a few years ago, because so many of these players in the NIL era and in the what will be the post-house versus NCAA era coming up starting this fall, a lot of players are making 1 year determinations about what they're going to do. These rosters are so fluid from 1 year to the next. It's like, basically think of it as professional league free agency every single year for all of the players. That is the madness that we're dealing with. And so there is an ability, I think, for Hurley or any coach to be able to go acquire veteran players via the portal, guys who will be seniors, and potentially retain some of his top players another year who were only planning to maybe play 1 more year of college basketball, such as Jaden Quainance or maybe Joe Sansanin if he decides to return to Tempe. That, coupled with the recruiting of guys who already might view themselves as one-and-dones, like Akoa Pete, the local superstar at Perry High School, who could potentially theoretically plug into Bashir Jihad's spot, who's this outgoing senior, could make this workable for Hurley in this current situation.
We watched him on Arizona's Family all weekend. He's the kind of guy that could turn things around for sure. Akoa Pete, just as physical as he plays. I know it's against high school competition, but that would be something that I think could kind of elevate this thing. You think, is it hinging on Koa Pete? I mean, Koa Pete, if he doesn't go to ASU, you think Bobby sticks around? Do your best forecast here, your best Sean McLaughlin, Royal Norman, April Warnicki, Paul Horton impression.
Yeah, I wouldn't go as far as to say that it hinges on that. But the Pete family have expressed to a number of people that they'd be very happy if Koa were to play in Arizona in college. His brother, Keona Pete, is a sophomore offensive lineman playing for Kenny Dillingham and the Sun Devils. ASU and Arizona have been very competitive in the recruitment. The family and Koa Pete have built a strong rapport with Bobby Hurley. Miami has apparently put together a pretty lucrative NIL type of an opportunity. So I can't say for sure that he's going to stay in Arizona. But again, if you have Jaden Quainance decide to return and you have Sean Phillips and Amir Ali, who's really played well in the last few weeks as a combo forward. Koa Pete would slot in quite nicely in the replacement of Bashir Jihad for the Sun Devils in what could be an extremely formidable front court that could compare reasonably well with most of the top Big 12 teams. They would need some help in the backcourt, but that could be done if, let's say, Adam Miller decided to return for a 6th year because he has another year of eligibility, should he choose to go that route. If Josan Sanin decided to come back and play another year of college at ASU, and then Hurley were to be able to go acquire 1 or 2 transfer portal pieces, especially a senior point guard who could replace Alston Mason.
Okay, you talked me into it. You got me fired up for next year, and we're not even done with this year yet. Why do you think it hasn't happened? It didn't happen this year, and he's been here since 2015. And Bobby Hurley, I mean, he was my favorite player growing up. I got really fired up when he came here. Why do you think it hasn't happened for him at ASU?
That's a longer conversation than we probably have now, Mark. But
tip-off is in how many minutes? Yeah, we're closing in on tip-off to the Big 12 game.
I'll give you 2 major factors. Number 1 is Bobby Hurley's teams, regardless of who the players have been, have tended to be emotionally volatile in self-harming ways. We saw it this year, BJ Freeman headbutting Caleb Love. Adam Miller slapped a Kansas State player. He was suspended for multiple games. We've seen it in the past. There have been bickering or arguments amongst players, infighting, locker room stuff. So the emotionality of Hurley has conveyed to his players in ways that have actually hurt the team, I would say. And then the second major reason is their offensive efficiency, particularly with their half-court shot selection and the way they go about trying to maximize their shots, hasn't been good enough over his tenure. And you can see this very easily when you look at the metrics. So like in Ken Palm, ASU's offensive efficiency has never been in the top 100 in recent years out of 350 teams or whatever it is. And so even though Bobby Hurley is really good at rebuilding his rosters, overcoming transfers, they haven't had enough continuity with their rosters, partly because of NIL and other reasons. They've been emotionally too up and down, big swings, and then he could benefit from more schematic reliability and execution on the offensive end.
Is this the last thing that you think will be reported about this, or are there more things? Like, are we going to be tuned into Sundevilsource's social media accounts all night to kind of see what else transpires here?
Well, we're going to have to see what Hurley says after the game or after the Big 12 tournament. We'll have to see whether or not he is offered a job elsewhere that has a 4 or 5 year contract guarantee, right? It's not hard to imagine a scenario in which a coach would be hesitant about going into a lame duck situation with 1 year left on a deal if he could get into a situation that would be a nice place to live with 4 or 5 years on a deal. So there have been rumors out there about South Florida being interested in Hurley, and I can't substantiate those rumors, but South Florida might be viewed as a nice place to live for somebody who is able to get a guarantee of $15 million to go be there for the next 4 or 5 years, right? So I think that Hurley is very much would prefer to get an extension from ASU. I don't expect that he's going to get any extension that would guarantee him money beyond his current contract. And then he will have to reconcile that reality and come to a final determination about what he would like to do next season.
And is any of this kind of left over from still paying Herm, still paying other coaches, Ray Anderson, and it not really being in the budget right now to switch basketball coaches or buy the basketball coach out?
This is a major factor. ASU inexplicably, 2.5 years ago, I said ASU should fire Herm Edwards and Ray Anderson for cause, pay them nothing, and let them try to come at ASU in court if they wanted to do that. And that would have not been successful. I think that there was a major mistake that was made by Michael Crow and Ray Anderson around the compensation of Herm Edwards, and then regarding the parachute, the golden parachute that Ray Anderson was given to work at the law school. Additionally, ASU now is going to be paying Kenny Dillingham $2 million more a year. It is retaining all of its staff. Brian Ward, Marcus Arroyo are making more money. Natasha Adair, the women's basketball coach, was just fired. That's going to cost over $1 million. ASU is going to start compensating its athletes around $18 million after the House versus NCAA settlement per year starting this fall. And there are other economic considerations like scholarship costs and other things that now Graham Rossini and the athletic department are dealing with in the wake of a report that ASU's operating revenue was $50 million less in fiscal year 2023-2024 than what the athletic department on its own generated. And so Michael Crow, in moving ASU from ASU athletics from an auxiliary entity to part of the university, is having to make decisions about how far of a discrepancy he's willing to allow between athletics revenue and athletics expenses. And so to say that this is not an economic decision would make no sense, because if ASU were happy with Bobby Hurley, of course it would give him an extension, given that what we know about how almost nobody goes into the final year of a deal in major college football or basketball. That just doesn't really happen. So no doubt this is an economic decision.
It's the old 50-51 rule. If you have 50, don't spend 51. I know you know that.
Yes.
All right. Well, give us a sense of your reporting for the rest of the day as we refresh our feeds and put them on notifications. What's the over/under on tweets for you?
Oh, well, there's going to be a lot of tweets because I'm going to be talking about what happens with ASU against Kansas State. You got ASU Arizona baseball on tap, right? I think for fans following this story, let's see what Bobby Hurley says after the game about his status moving forward, how committed that he appears to be when he knows that he only has this 1 year left on his contract. And then we'll, depending on how that goes, what happens in the coming days about any sort of conversations about ways to alleviate concerns that he might have, or whether that's even something that is a possibility, and then whether or not he indeed does return to ASU. And then, of course, Mark, transfer portal madness starts. Like, is ASU going to be able to keep a lot of its top young talent? All of that stuff will start to allow us to have a better understanding in coming days.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks for making time for us before a busy evening, and you've definitely set the table for some drama tonight. So good stuff.
Hey, just passing along what we've heard and are able to report.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Well, hey, thanks for always making time for us. The Extra Point Podcast is a production of 3TV, CBS5, and azfamily.com in Phoenix, Arizona.